I was just going to say that consolidation, you're getting more larger organizations, um, fewer smaller organizations, more big equals more power. Um, like the five largest trade houses, right,
Hmm.
had were responsible for half the total green coffee export production in 5 years ago. Well, as of 5 years ago.
Right.
So there's a tremendous amount of power in that market power, buying power.
Hmm.
It's
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop. It's time to become a coffee consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details.
Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of a brand new 5-part series on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward. And I am not exaggerating when I say to you, I have been waiting 1,300 plus episodes to do this series. I have been hassling Nick Brown for years to come on the podcast. Nick Brown is the editor of the Daily Coffee News by Roast magazine. He's a journalist. He has a perspective of the industry that very few of us have, and I have been dying to have Nick on the podcast. He's very busy. And so he hasn't been able to come on the podcast until now. And I basically begged him to come on the podcast to have this conversation. So Nick, thank you for coming on the podcast. It's a real treat for me to have you on the podcast.
wow. Well, thank you. I mean, that's a lot. I appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here. I don't know that I'm as busy as I am poorly organized, but
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Nick, in this series, we're going to be talking about connecting the dots of the coffee industry. And while that at the surface may sound like if people are out there listening going, what does that mean? We're going to be talking a lot about power in this series. We're going to be talking a lot about how power is used and how it has been I don't even know what the right word is, and we'll explore that through the series, but distributed is one thing that we've been thinking about as we were trying to put together our ideas for the different episodes in this series. In this episode, we're going to talk about what are the different power differentials in the coffee value chain. The reason I couldn't have this conversation with anyone but Nick, in my opinion, is because very few people occupy a similar space in our industry than Nick and I do. We have been doing what we do a long time. I'm not a journalist, but it had to be Nick because Nick is a journalist. And Nick approaches things very differently to the way that I do because I'm not a journalist. And Nick writes stories. His publication is the only publication I read in the coffee industry. So, Nick, I would like for you to tell people who you are and what you do, other than obviously what I've said, and then we can get into our conversation.
Well, I mean, wow, again, thank you for the kind words and thanks for reading.
You're
Um,
welcome.
yeah. um, as you mentioned, I'm the editor of Daily Coffee News by Roast Magazine. I've been covering the coffee industry for 14 years now. My background is actually news reporting, newspaper reporting, and then I sort of shifted into the trade magazine world. And then luckily landed in coffee, where I hope to be for the rest of my career. Um, and yeah, as you mentioned, I'm not I'm not necessarily a coffee person. I've never owned or operated a coffee business, which in some ways I think makes me somewhat uninformed. But I have been seeing the industry from kind of an outsider's perspective for the past 14 years, from many different sides.
Mm.
And hopefully I can offer some perspective today, but I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out. You seem to be everyone out there who reads your articles, and a lot of people read your articles, and they're shared widely amongst our mastermind groups. They're shared with clients, etc., because of the integrity that they hold and the questions that they ask. And it's a big reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you. So, if we get this started with, as we talk about power differentials, let's ask the very obvious question. What do we mean by power when we talk about power in the context of this conversation, in your mind?
Yeah, I think in coffee, it's often just framed as big versus small, right?
Right.
You might be just talking about a large multinational corporation versus a small farm worker or barista. Um, but one of the reasons I was really excited about this particular topic is because it comes up so often in our own reporting of the coffee industry.
Mm-hmm.
So like one story we will be writing about the new CEO of the large corporation that moves and trades 6% of the world's coffee. And then the next story may be a revision to a sustainability scheme. And then the next story may be, a really detailed, thorough interview with a single location coffee shop owner in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And these are very different audiences, seemingly, with very different interests. But the longer I do this and the more of these stories we see and run through, the more interviews we do, the more I see that there are connections as opposed to divide between these groups, right? They're all broadly related. They're all related by coffee, of course, but they're all part of a larger system that the coffee industry is living in. So we wrestle with this a lot. Like, who is the audience? Who is this story for? What purpose is it serving? Why does it matter to them? What do these audience segments have in common?
Mm.
And I think they have a lot in common. And one of those things is they are subject to the same power dynamics.
And how would you describe those power dynamics?
Yeah, again, just going back to big versus small, you can look at one end of the spectrum, and you might have farm workers or
Mm-hmm.
seasonal coffee pickers. Other end of that very large spectrum might be multinational company that involved in numerous elements of the coffee chain. But from point A to point B, there's about 1 million different power dynamics within that, right? From barista to shop manager to shop owner to wholesale supplier, what have you, keep going all the way through. Obviously, one of the things that the coffee industries, particularly the specialty coffee industry, has experienced in the past 10 years or so is way more consolidation, right?
Right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say consolidation, you're getting more larger organizations, fewer smaller organizations, more big equals more power. Like the 5 largest trade houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were responsible for half the total green coffee export production in 5 years ago. Well, as of 5 years ago.
Right.
So there's a tremendous amount of power in that, market power, buying power, etc.
Okay, so if we look at that and we ask the question of we've kind of defined what power is, and we want to help people understand what a power differential is. before we understand what the power differentials in the coffee industry are. So in your mind, what's a power differential?
Well, I mean, first of all, probably should have mentioned that it's hard to dissociate power from money, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the coffee industry. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's pretty clear. Um, a power differential, I don't know, might be a power dynamic in which it has less risk.
Mm-hmm.
One party has less risk than the other. One party has more control over market forces than the other.
Mm-hmm.
One party may have fewer options or strategies to participate in the coffee industry in like a productive, financially sustainable way.
Right.
That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, and I guess accessibility is another
Yeah.
part of a power differential, right? That in the era that we're in, accessibility to things like coffee and labor and money, credit, all of those things are playing a role in power differentials. So in your mind, what are the power differentials that are operating in the coffee value chain today?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point with accessibility. Market accessibility for coffee, smallholder coffee farmers is one of the things you hear about all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and you have nonprofits or government organizations who are constantly trying to do capacity building and
Mm-hmm.
logistics building and relationship building to create more market opportunities for smallholder farmers who may not otherwise have those opportunities through traditional channels.
Mm-hmm.
You could also apply that to, it might be just access to a trade show. Do you have enough money? Can you afford a plane ticket to go and a hotel room to go to a trade show, let alone exhibit at a trade show or something like that? So um, those are, I think, just prominent examples of how power differentials play out on a day-to-day basis.
Mm. What are some of the other power differentials that you have come across in the reporting that you guys have been doing?
Well, labor is a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
Labor, when I say labor, I mean both in coffee farming and in the consumer end, in the retail coffee market,
Mm-hmm.
or in that matter. Organizing labor is obviously been a huge issue for the last couple of years. Worker-owned or cooperative structuring continues to be a huge issue. And on the flip side of that, trying to disorganize labor is another effort that some
Tell me more
organizations.
about that.
Well, you could talk about union busting or
Right.
um, you know monopolizations of certain markets
Mm-hmm.
on the farming end.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those would be two examples.
Yeah.
But I mean, one thing that we keep coming back to in our reporting is that this is not a conversation that is part of the day-to-day operations of most people working in coffee, right? They're not pontificating about power dynamics. They're just running their businesses. And most of the people that we talk to are smaller operators, smaller businesses who are genuinely sort of focused on trying to do the best job that they can while maintaining some profit. Most of the people that we're talking to on a daily basis want to run like ethical, sustainable businesses and they value close relationships with the people who are immediately around them within their client network. What sometimes may be less apparent is how those people, those actors, may be constrained by some of the larger market forces that have defined and restricted the global coffee industry since the dawn of coffee commercialization. Like coffee continues to be exploitative in nature, extractive, resource intensive, all these things. And yet people working in coffee don't want to be complicit in that.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of whenever we talk about power dynamics or power differentials in coffee.
Yeah, it's an interesting one at the moment, particularly because it seems like, depending how informed you are, people are aware that something's broken. And it didn't just break now. It's been broken for a long time, and people have always kind of known it's broken. But because we were kind of always skating by, we didn't need to fix it. And now it's getting to the point where it's so broken that it's perhaps beyond the point of being able to just skate by. And the seriousness of the situation is going to require a whole bunch of attention. And that attention, go ahead, please.
No, sorry. You bring up a great point, which is that this conversation is kind of predicated on a premise that something is broken.
Yeah.
And I speak with a lot of people who kind of, when they talk about coffee, lead with that premise. I'm sure there are many, many actors throughout the coffee nexus who don't see that, or don't lead with that premise, at least. Yeah, I think you're right. That's a good point.
Well, and what I think is happening is that here's a strange thing. You can operate a business in the coffee industry without having any idea how coffee is grown or traded. That's kind of fucked up. Because without that knowledge, you can't possibly have the empathy that's required for the people who are working their asses off to get coffee from the soil into your roastery and then your cafe. So that when things do break, like they've now broken, beyond repair, you have one of two choices. You either have to figure it out super quickly, or you have to become hyper aware of the mortality of your business very, very quickly. And we are in that. If we're not in that moment, we are almost in that moment as an industry. And I'm excited and scared all at the same time, because these power differentials have the opportunity to either benefit in this moment or reshape themselves in this moment. And in the next episode, folks, what we're going to talk about is why, despite many, many years of people trying to change these power differentials or fix these power differentials or at least redistribute these power differentials, we haven't had that much success. Because it boggles the mind how so many people have been, this podcast is one tiny speck in the last 8 years that has been trying to get people to have this conversation. We have made zero dent. How is it that so many people, and we're just one of a huge, not large number of people that are trying to change this, and nothing seems to have changed? So we're going to talk about in the next episode. Join us for that. Thanks, Nick. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.